Welcome, everyone. Let's take a moment just to attune together. If you're in a place where it's safe to close your eyes, feel free to close your eyes and come into the space within. Follow the breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Once more, let's take another deep cleansing breath together, inviting in the cleansing rain. We imagine it as a rain cloud showering down through the top of your head into the central channel, diving into the belly, diving into the belly of the whale, deep in the ocean of life, and feeling the movement of the breath, the stillness in the movement, inviting the movement of your feet on the earth, walking in the forest, feeling the earth beneath your feet, the sky above your head, sounds of the creature beings, the water flowing, moving towards a space, an open space. In the forest, we come together around the campfire, coming together around this eternal flame, this inner fire. And also in our imagination, we can see it surrounded by a circle of stones containing the fire so it doesn't consume the whole forest. And we give thanks for the stones and the plants around us, the trees around us, creating a sacred space. We invite the animals. We have some curiosity about the hoppers today, the ones who hop, and other animals that wish to be here. Any animals that wish to be here, seen or unseen, are welcome. They're already with us, they're already part of us, so we just welcome them and give them our gratitude. And the ancient ones, the ancestors, the masters, the deep and abiding intelligence, the love of life. We give thanks for this opportunity to be here, for the fire, for the water, for the earth, for the air, for the ether, the invisible connectivity between all things. You can let that image go, open the conversation.
Okay, maybe I would start. So my story, I was tuning in for this week a gathering with Hoppy friends, and I couldn't quite come up with any story just at the top of my head, but I was inviting this space in my life for one to appear. And funny enough, like a couple of days later, when I was in the morning, getting ready, I just saw a grasshopper on the toilet roll, just sitting there. And I was just like, oh, hello. I feel that you might be inviting me for a little journey with you. But I left it sort of. I was just like, I'll see how it goes. And thought it would take me down a really sort of joyful, happy, sort of reminded me of the childhood stories when, I was little, and those grasshopper stories together with the bees and the birds. But actually, this one didn't really, because we had a very intense week when it comes to death. And a couple of very close friends passed on to the other side. And on top of that, my parents' cat gave birth to a little kitten, and the kitten didn't survive. So he passed on to the other side. It was just like one after another after another. And which I'm still sitting. I'm saying we as in me and my husband, but I'm still sitting with that. And my husband went for the one of the funeral because it was his mom's best friend. And as he came back, I didn't go to that one, but as he came back, we were walking our dog, and he had the grasshopper on his shoe as well. So I was just like, oh, this is definitely an invitation to dive in. So I went on into the dream arc and read about grasshopper, which is so fascinating because it's a Jinky 35, which is actually my core wound for those who know the Jinky and dream arc connections. And I am actually at the moment in the course called Star Pearl, and I am actually at the at the sphere of vocation. I'm going through this as one of the triangle. Not to go into details, but just to give you a little background. Um, and basically, what Grasshopper shared with me was pretty fascinating. The most that stood out for me was that basically to face your fears, but to see where in your life you're still holding some fear. And basically, that at the end of the day, the biggest fear is the fear of death. And death is the greatest leap in consciousness, or the greatest leap of all. And I was just sitting with it because, of course, from the human perspective, I was taken into the great dance of a lot of emotions, losing one of, well, especially the closest friend that has been so dear to my heart, Eileen, a beautiful, beautiful soul. And she flew to the light. She was so loved, such an amazing soul. And she's now on the other side. So it's like, of course, my human self was shed a few tears and I had lots of emotions. But at the same time, this process was so amazing to observe, like to be so close with her, because I came to say goodbye to her literally a few hours before she passed on. So I was in that sphere that is quite scary for a lot of people. So it's like a very sacred space to be in. And on one hand, it's so sad and terrifying and all sorts of emotions. And on the other hand, it's like it's really freedom, it's freedom of the spirit living this adventure, this on the earth. And so many of us really fear this process. So I thought that the grasshopper really helped me to be a little bit more, to understand a little bit more that passage on some level. Of course, like there's still a lot of emotions that comes and grieving that I've got to do, and of course there's this keeps coming, but I just found it so fascinating to of the synchronicities for that little hoppy friend to arrive in this specific moments, in this very interesting and weird and intense week that I've had with his very amazing wisdom. And just today, as I was just sitting in the garden and thinking, do I want to share anything else? Let me find a little inspiration from the world about grasshopper. And I basically just found that there was this amazing photographer, American photographer. She was a Vietnam War correspondent and photographer. Her name was, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, but it was Dickie Chapel. And she was a peace activist. And she basically was making all this photography that was portraying these horrific conditions, and where everything was scorched and the smoke was still rising, and she just could see all that horrificness of a war. And at one point she was holding her camera and she was about to snap a few of photos of these images, and then she saw a grasshopper sitting on a bamboo stalk, and she snapped this photo and she shared what I'm going to read now. It's her words. She said, "This grasshopper reminded me that even after the fiercest destruction, life insists on returning. Sometimes it is the smallest being who carry the biggest truths." And I really loved that because it became like a symbol of peace. So people were actually using this as I was trying to find a photo, I couldn't find it. I will go and dig a little bit more. So I encourage anyone who's listening maybe you can find it and share with us. But basically, it was just beautiful because it brought hope, in the times that at the moment, the times on our planet are also quite intense. There's quite a few conflicts as well. And maybe this grasshopper keep hopping back to bring that hope that even in the toughest conditions, life still wants insist on living. And it's just that's what it brought for me. So together, Grasshopper brought me so much amazing wisdom, and I kind of, yeah, I'm very happy that I could share it here with you. So I feel I'm gonna leave it at that. That beautiful image of the grasshopper, so fragile, so small, and yet insisting on living. So yeah, thank you.
Hi, this is Anne today, and I'm going to jump in here because I think my story follows nicely with yours, Cassia. Um, so my story is about baby birds hopping around as they get strong enough to fly. So I'm being a bit of a trickster because we don't consider birds as hoppy ones, but I've spent this spring watching online eagles in California and owls in Texas having their young ones and watching these young ones develop. And in the nest, these eagles, especially, they do a lot of they call them winger sizing. And so they're flapping their wings to get stronger and stronger. And they're hopping around the nest. They actually start with really big feet. And so which is quite amusing, but they start hopping around the nest and they're jumping and doing these winger sizes. And if there were two in this particular nest, you can only go one at a time because the nest is only so big and their wings are actually huge. And I actually got to see some last year up island and on Vancouver Island in a nest for a while. We sat and watched them for quite some time. That was one of the pieces about the babies. The other interesting piece about the babies that I found this spring was that even after they leave the nest, the parents still feed them, which is interesting. So they really learn about hunting and stuff once they are in flight. And that was just something I didn't know. So, and then my more current story, people may have heard on the Tricksters when I spoke about the Merlins. Well, we've just had an update on the Merlins this weekend, and there was a mating pair of Merlins up at the park that I saw quite a lot this spring, and in probably early May, that and didn't really know what had happened to them. And so this Sunday, I suddenly got a text from a friend saying, "There's something going on in the park with your birds." I just laughed because calling them my birds. But we have been keeping our eyes open for the Merlins, and we have seen the parents off and on since May. And she said, "Go get up to the park." So I headed up to the park, and there at the park was a fire truck. And this fire truck had its whole ladder extended and the bucket up there. And it was right against this huge tree where I had very first time I'd seen the Merlins was in this particular tree. And I was like, wow, what is happening? And so, of course, curious. And so I find out, and it turns out that the mating pair of Merlins, that they're small falcons, had two babies. And these babies had hopped out of wherever into the park and onto the ground. And so somebody had obviously found them. And here in Victoria, we have something called Wild ARC, which is Wild Animal Rehabilitation Center. So someone obviously called them, and these people came and rescued these birds from the ground. There's a lot of dogs at the park and deer and who knows what else could harm them, including humans, I guess. And so they were putting these fledglings back in a very, very tall tree. tree, nice and safe. As they were doing it, there was a woman from this wild ark and a firefighter in the bucket. And as they were doing it, they saw the mom not far away, and she was eating something, so they know she's catching food. And so that was a good sign. And yeah, so they were very pleased with everything. They took some video. We all shared videos. It was really quite fun. And then a couple of hours later, I went up and just to see, because I kind of thought, wow, I think these birds are pretty far along in coming to flight. And I took my binoculars up, and I saw them hopping about in a different tree. So they had managed to get from one tree to another, and they were on this really long branch, and one of them looked really unsteady on its talons, but it was, and then they actually kind of flew into another tree, but the flight was kind of, I would just say, awkward. And so there was kind of this idea that they're not really flying, but kind of hopping. And so it was really interesting to see. But they're obviously close to full flight. And then later that night, I went up again to the park. It's only 5 minute walk away. And both parents were flying around these various trees that are fairly close together. So that was a really good sign that the parents are still looking after them and everything. And I did go up last night, but I didn't even hear them, because usually you hear them before you see them for sure. But when they are doing the winger sizing thing, you see them in the tree because they're flapping like crazy and very awkward looking too. So that was my sort of story of how the birds are a little bit of hoppers before they become winged ones. And what I sort of took away from all of that was, in becoming a fully winged one to take to the sky, they have to have a lot of patience to grow and just get bigger and grow into these big feet they've got, or talons they've got. And then just the determination, the constant determination of practicing and practicing this winger size. Because when I watched the eagles online, they did this for weeks and weeks and weeks. The owls, one of them hopped out of the nest very early. So, but I'm told that they were still being fed by mom and and dad and things like that. So they were fine, but they didn't seem to do quite as much of this winging things. But maybe, well, who knows? And then I was really taken by the kind of how our instincts lead us, and that they move us through all of our stages of life. And if we move into a more effortless, like if we allow nature to take its course, even within ourselves, we don't really have to effort all the time. We can move in a bit more of an effortless manner. And that sort of felt like that's what these, especially the eagles, were doing. They would flap, 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 and then another time you'd see them sleeping in the nest, and they were just naturally following whatever they needed to do. And so at this point, my two little eaglets are in the nature, in the wild, and they've left the nest and haven't been seen for a few days. And the owls have long left the nest, and I trust they're doing fine. And I will still go up to the park and see where my two little merlins are and what they're doing, but I suspect they're going to disappear into their invisible nature quite shortly. And so that is my story for today.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Cassia. The image I had when we were talking about the leapers or the hoppers, the hoppy ones, was walking through the neighborhood, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this frog leaping from a rock into this real small pond that somebody had created in their front yard. And so that's the entirety of my story of the physical side of the frog. But it brought up a contemplation around the frog that has some other stories involved. Like there's some real ancient stories. And the first one that comes to mind is there's a story of two frogs in trouble. And the story goes that they both hopped into a pail of milk. Somebody had milked the cow and they hopped in there and they couldn't get out. And they were paddling, 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 paddling. And at some point, one of them just thought, "To heck with this, this is too much. I give up." And it just drowned. And the other one just was like, "Keep on keeping on and never give up, never surrender." And eventually it paddled until the milk started to churn into butter and it gave it something that it could get its feet on, and then it hopped out into safety. So it's sort of an ancient tale, actually, I believe, about um, you know perseverance and moving through struggles and difficulties, um, and so the frog image takes me to these places like of connection to the water, connection to the emotional realms, and so it feels very fitting that we've had some talk of uh, even death and the difficulties of these little birds. Then they get pushed out of the nest, and we all get pushed out of the nest at some point, in various ways and levels. And there's always these cycles of change. And of course, the frog wasn't always a frog; it was a little tadpole swimming around in the water. So it's starts its life in this creative place of immersion, let's just say. And and the other story I love is one of the other stories I love is about the frog um, calling in the thunder beings, and how when the times are dry, when emotions are dry, when the feelings are sort of at a loss, um, it's possible to use the voice, to sing out and to um, call in something new and something refreshing, and to be aware of when I need to take a pause and um, connect with the creator, connect with the creative source of life. And sometimes it does require some perseverance. Sometimes it does require even just a little bit more awareness, but it's always available to me. And so I I have another connection with the frog story, the story of the Frog Prince. Where um, the princess comes to kiss the frog, and turns into her beloved prince. So there's sort of always this story of transformation through um, diving into the emotional realms, or the realm of feeling, and purification and cleansing is such a huge part of the frog energy to me. And so there's an invitation to that in this little um, writing from the frog, where I asked, and frog said, "I am frog who sings a song of abundant joy, calling rain and thunder to the sky. I'm here to help you replenish your reserves with laughter, love, and life force. There are dry times in the cycle of life and in the creative process by which you dream your life into existence. And this is natural. You wouldn't want every day to be gray and overcast, or sunny and warm. But during a heat wave, you are more grateful for the clouds, and after monsoons, you crave a glimpse of sunshine. So I'm the call for gentle, renewing change." That's part of one of the messages. And the last part of another message says, "When you feel Any type of dryness, lack, loss, or sadness, look directly into it, however ugly it appears. It is speaking to you, like the frog who spoke to the princess in her time of distress. Kiss the frog that appears to you and see what happens next. That's my story. I'm complete.
Oh, just my odd. You reminded me and inspired me that the grasshopper also was talking into the such an importance of pausing, taking the time to, being very careful not to skip it, not to skip the pause, because in the pause the change come, and we very often try to fill it up with things. So it seems like Frog was also, giving the similar sort of sentiments, just to let's just don't skip it, don't run away from it. And thank you for reminding me about that and for all the stories.
This is Margaret. I thought I wouldn't have anything to share today because I hadn't had any hoppers come to me in my contemplations. But I'm going to risk it and just share a little joke that came up. I was thinking about frog as David was talking, and it's this little story of the wide-mouthed frog. I don't know if you've heard that one before, but this is the story of the wide-mouthed frog. He was a wide-mouthed frog, and he was very proud. It's sort of a visual story, so maybe it doesn't work that well, but I'm trying to open my mouth really wide as I tell it, okay? So I am a wide-mouthed frog. And so he's sitting at the edge of the pond, and he meets a grasshopper, and he says, "Hi, who are you?" And the grasshopper says, "Well, I'm a grasshopper." "Oh, grasshopper, what do you eat?" "Well, I eat little plants." And the wide-mouthed frog says, "I eat grasshoppers," and he eats the grasshopper. And his tongue flicks out and he eats the grasshopper. And then a little bunny comes. They're all hoppers. Interesting. And he says, "Hi, who are you?" "Well, I'm a bunny." And, "Oh, what do you eat?" And the bunny says, "I eat grass." And the wide-mouthed frog says, "Oh." And then a moment later, a heron comes by, and he says, "Hi, who are you?" And the heron says, "I'm a heron." "Oh, what do you eat?" And the heron says, "I eat wide-mouthed frogs." And the wide-mouthed frog closes his lips and says, "Ooh, nice to meet you." But I do have a poem to share right here at the end that I wrote a couple springs ago when I first came to this wet country of Oregon. It says, "Frog song all night long, not as rhythmic as the crickets, but singing in the spring in puddles and ponds, still transports me far beyond. What inspires them to croon that way, I've wondered before, when they pause in the day. I've noticed as well to realms of imagination they open the door. It's like an intermission bell. Frog song all night long. Everything is all right because nothing is wrong. Not as rhythmic as the crickets, but singing in the springs and puddles and ponds still transports me far beyond." Thank you. That's my share.
Wow, Margaret, thank you so much. And that reminded me, I was sitting a couple of years back with my dad and my family, but specifically with my dad because we stayed the longest by the beautiful lake And then all of a sudden, like quite late into the night, there was so many frogs that were singing, and the most beautiful symphony they were giving us, like the concerto, you know, and it was such a beautiful summer night. And I said to my dad, I was like, I wonder what they're singing about, what they're talking to each other about. And now I know. They're saying all is well, everything is all right. So thank you.